Number 1 seed, the Oregon Ducks, champions of the Big Ten, 13-0, victorious over Penn State, and the Ducks, Dan Lanning, go in as the number 1 seed. The number 2 seed, also as expected, champions of the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs. Find out about Carson Beck, who was hurt. Their backup Gunnar Stockton led them to victory in overtime against Texas yesterday to claim the SEC and get second seed and the second bye into the quarterfinals. Now, there are only 2 more byes left, and a conference champion has to claim each of those 2 byes, and there are 3 candidates. Here are the resumes. Boise State from the Mountain West, Arizona State from the Big 12, Clemson, a surprise winner in the ACC, and not listed on Boise State's resume. It's what we talked about earlier, their lone loss, a close game against Oregon. Who do you favor?
I favor Boise State, champions of the Mountain West, 12-1. And to your point, their only loss on the road at Eugene. They had to get a couple of kickoffs to beat them. I think they should be above those other 2.
I would be stunned if it's not Boise State, because Tuesday, when you talk about the gap between Boise State and where Arizona State was and where Clemson was, I'd be stunned if they were able to jump them.
I would go with Arizona State. I think they're playing their best football at the right time. Last 2 times out, absolutely dominating the competition. So I would go with the Sun Devils of Arizona State.
Oregon, Georgia, pretty easy. The 3rd seed in the college football playoff, a bye into the quarterfinals, goes to Boise State. Strength of schedule overall in the 80s, right around 80, but Spencer Danielson's team, watch party there. Ashton Jeanty, Heisman Trophy candidate. And Boise State, for years, they were the team that built their brand. They got in to those New Year's Six Bowls. They tried to slay the Giants. This is different. Now they're playing and competing for a national championship. Win, and they can take home the biggest prize. Now, 1 more bye in the quarterfinals remains. It will go to a conference champion, and we're down to Arizona State or Clemson. Who has the final bye? It's Arizona State. So Arizona State gets the bye. What a job Kenny Dillingham, the former Oregon offensive coordinator. Look at the potential in the semifinals of Oregon against Arizona State, and the Sun Devils celebrating a remarkable turnaround. Picked to finish dead last in the Big 12. Instead, they not only make the playoff, they get a bye into the quarterfinals. And we'll tell you where these bowl games will be. You can probably figure it out, but we'll tell you where the bowl games are a little bit later on. And that's what the quarterfinals will be, bowl games.
Just a tremendous reward for winning a conference championship, too. Highlighting the opportunity to avoid the first round, make it to the second round automatically, and getting that first round bye.
But I do want to point out something. Conference championships have been rewarded, but what you have is number 1 and number 2 in the rankings with a bye, but you also have number 9 and number 12. So they're viewed by the committee as the 9th and 12th best teams, but instead, they're placed into the quarterfinals with a bye under this system. I think we have all said and pointed out, I hope this is a 1-year deal. Yeah. After this, just seed the field. Yeah. You know, you don't get the bye just by winning the conference. So there is 1 more automatic bid to go into this 12-team bracket. It will be Clemson. So let's see where Clemson is. Clemson, still ranked 16th. So the 16th ranked team in the country is seeded 12th. They get the lowest seed possible in the field.
Yeah, and I don't think it matters to Clemson right now.
No,
just a few weeks ago, they weren't in this thing, and now they are. And I think they come in this thing excited to just be in. Doesn't matter where they go, doesn't matter what they're seeded, they're in the top 12.
So those are the teams who qualified by winning conference championships automatically into the 12-team bracket. Now from here, we have to fill out the rest of the bracket. And remember, the teams seeded 5 through 8, wherever they are ranked, 5 through 8, gets a home game. So the 5th seed, who will play Clemson in the bracket and play them at home, is the Texas Longhorns. Texas and Clemson in a first-round game in Austin. Winner gets Arizona State, and I would imagine that everybody would take that path right now.
That is a very coveted seed, that 5 seed, the opportunity to play the weakest team in the field, and then now up against a Big 12 team in the second round after the first round bye. And the committee had Texas ahead of Penn State. They had them ahead of Notre Dame going into conference championship weekend. So, tough game, hard-fought game, losing in overtime. They stay in front of the two teams they were likely being measured against.
And here's a situation where the committee is valuing those 2 losses against Georgia, because if you look at Texas's best 2 wins against A&M and against Vanderbilt, so they're valuing those close losses.
And as we continue on with an SEC versus ACC motif throughout this reveal, Clemson 0-2 against SEC team, blown out by Georgia, lost to South Carolina, who is not going to be in the field. So Texas has a home game. They're the 5 seed, number 3 in the country according to the rankings. Who has the 6 seed? Penn State. So Happy Valley will host a first-round playoff game after James Franklin's team came up a little bit short against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and not an objectionable path for Penn State. We'll see who they play, but then the Boise State foe in the quarterfinal, no disrespect to Boise, think you take that probably.
Yeah,
for
if
Penn
you're looking
State.
at Penn State, again, you're valuing losses for Penn State.
Yes.
You look at their resume and who they beat, not great, but they did play Ohio State. They did play Oregon, lost both those games. Those are the 2 losses. They come in as a 6 seed. I'm not arguing it, but there will be people out there saying, who are those 11 wins against?
Okay, so you have 1 home game at Texas. You have 1 home game at Penn State. The 7th seed in the college football playoff. The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, and on a chilly afternoon or evening in December, beneath the Golden Dome in the shadow of Touchdown Jesus, the Word of Life mural. Oh, look, they're in stormtrooper gear. They're going to went right into the snow. If it snows in South Bend, you won't be able to see them.
Where's the pizza at? What is this?
Marcus Freeman, what a job they did. Notre
what a
Dame
job.
will have a home game as the 7th seed. Once we get to the 10, we'll find out their matchup. Now, 1 more home game left. And one thing I'm going to ask Ward Manuel shortly when he joins us, how much consideration went into this? Because let's be honest, there's not a sliver of difference between whoever's going to be seeded 8 and 9, but one of them is going to get to play at home in the first round. The 8th seed final home game belongs to Ohio State. Coming off a disappointment the last time they set foot on the shoe, but the Buckeyes will be at home, and they will have that weather advantage, Kirk, as Ryan Day and the Bucs will try to bounce back from the disappointment against Michigan.
After the way the Ohio State season ended against Michigan, I don't know if it would have been better for Ohio State to go on the road, to get away from their home crowd that'll be booing after their 3rd down not converting and the punter comes out, booing Ryan Day. They'll have to rally and have a good start to that game, or it could turn sideways with the home crowd, in my opinion.
Ohio State's going to be at home, and if the Buckeyes can get past their opponent, who we'll see shortly, got the opportunity for the rematch against Oregon in what was just a great game in the regular season in Eugene. But as Kirk rightly pointed out, the Buckeyes have some things to overcome given the way their season ended. So those are the teams that will be playing at home. Who has to go on the road and face Ohio State as the 9 seed? The Tennessee Volunteers. And Big Orange really hoping that they were going to get a home game. Instead, they'll travel not too far away and go to Columbus.
And the fact that they didn't get a home game, I wouldn't be disappointed seeing the way that Ohio State hasn't stopped the run. We know that Tennessee's going to run the football with Dylan Sampson. So all things being equal, if you're Josh Heupel, you got to feel pretty good about going to Columbus.
Yeah, I think if you're Tennessee, you probably like the opportunity. You like the matchup. Every team you play is going to be tough. But the one area that Ohio State has struggled with is along their own offensive line. What is the best part of Tennessee's team? Their defensive front. So I think that matchup will be fascinating to see if Ohio State's O-line can solidify here before this first round game.
Kirk?
Reese, I think it's interesting to look at that next game, right? The winner of that game, we were talking earlier about Texas and Clemson playing Arizona State, that being potentially a coveted position. We talked about that all year, that 5-hole. Look at Tennessee and Ohio State, who they match up with, the winner of that game. That's pretty exciting to look at that game. Potential rematch with Oregon and Ohio State, or Tennessee gets a shot to take on the number 1 team throughout the year.
You know, it could be, that maybe we talked about the 5 seed being coveted. As I look at the way this bracket's unfolding, maybe it's going to be 6. Maybe it's 6. Okay, 8-9 game is Ohio State, Tennessee. The 7-10 matchup in South Bend. The Fighting Irish will take on in-state battle. Signetti wanted a home game. I don't think he had much of a case for a home game, but he doesn't have to travel too far. As the Hoosiers, what a remarkable season. They go out to take on the Irish.
You talk about two different teams, Indiana and Notre Dame. Notre Dame with their run game, Riley Leonard also their run game, Jeremiah Love, the running back, going against an Indiana team that is, when you look at them, they want to throw the ball, they want to put in the air. Very good defense, but can then hold up against the run of Notre Dame.
In-state battle. I don't see that one a lot over the years, And now forced together by this new 12-team bracket. Notre Dame and Indiana. Winner gets Georgia in the quarterfinals. So, one spot remaining. I think we pretty much know the two teams it comes down to. Does it come down to Alabama, which has some rough losses, or SMU, which really doesn't have anything that ugly on its resume, but they also don't have anything that really stands out as a punctuation mark of something that would put them into the field. You see the key wins being Louisville and Duke, Pitt and TCU, whereas Alabama has three teams on their ledger that will be ranked in the top 15 to 20 in these final rankings. And
I think the biggest gap right there is the key wins, and I think that's what Coach Saban was talking about. When you look at the key wins for Alabama versus the key wins for SMU, being Louisville, Duke, Pitt, TCU, I mean, there is a mile apart in having to go through those schedules.
I know that I'm dragging this up. I want to say this before we get to the end. There's no right answer here, but there are downsides to both answers because SMU played in a conference championship game. Alabama has a couple of ugly losses, but you got to choose one of them, and they're going to get criticism either way. To take on Penn State and the final spot in the college football playoff, who is it? The SMU Mustangs hold on to that final spot and edge out Alabama. So it will be SMU and Penn State as the ACC gets the last two spots in terms of seeding, and they get the last at-large spot. And so now we'll do the first team out, which we all presume to be Alabama. Alabama is the first team out, and the second team out, I assume, will be Miami again. And it is. So Miami and Alabama come up just short. SMU hangs on and gets the spot. And Nick, what's your reaction? Now, Nick has talked about this all year on College Game Day, that who you play has to matter, has to be important, whether that's talking about Alabama or anybody else in college football. If you want to incentivize scheduling, then you have